In a small remote city, nestled between towering skyscrapers, lived a little boy named Samuel. He is brilliant, filled with ambitions, dreams, and a heart full of hope. Samuel was 8 years old when his world blinked down. His late mom, Ella, who had been the center of his universe, got pregnant out of wedlock. She became a single mother when the man responsible for her pregnancy turned back at her. She was warm and gentle. She sat and watched my infant bed. She nurtured me and gave me the best of life as a loving mother. But one summer she passed out in a tragic accident due to a reckless drunk driver who snuffed life out of her while she was up and about on a very busy day. Though Samuel was still a child then and couldn't understand what death really means. But as time goes by, he comes to realize that she's missing 1,000 miles away from him and will never return back to the world no matter the amount of tears shed. The house, usually filled with the aroma of meal and laughter, now felt silent and cold. Samuel's grandmother, Agnes, from his maternal home, came and picked him up during the mixture of despondent and loneliness. Agnes is an old woman in her late 60s, worn down by the weight of her own life struggle. She had been living with HIV/AIDS for years. She contracted it during her university days through an affair she had with a certain young rich boy in her campus. She had received treatment that allowed her to live a relatively healthy life, but the stigma of her health status turned her into a very reserved and isolated old woman. She made her condition a top secret from Samuel, so as not to make him feel she's unworthy of raising him. At night came the hardest day when Grandma had to take her medication. Samuel would sit beside her, watching as she swallowed the pills that kept the virus at bay. "Grandma, are you ill?" Samuel asked. She never wanted to burden Samuel with the truth about her HIV status. She felt ashamed of telling her young, fragile, and emotionally bereft grandson the truth about her hidden battles. "Just having a little headache," she lied. "Quick recovery, Grandma," Samuel said, and went to bed. So one afternoon, Samuel returned from the daily sales of Hawking sachet water and observed that his grandma was not at home. He went to his grandma's bedroom in search of his dump truck toy. Eventually, his eyes surveyed a big bag filled with drugs. "What?" he screamed at the top of his voice in astonishment. He tiptoed towards the bag, take an empty packet, and read, "This drug is meant for HIV patients. It is a sickness where one has to fight harder to stay healthy. Note, HIV has no cure." Samuel's eyes widened. He didn't fully understand all the details, but he decided to keep the packet to himself and ask his grandma when she gets home to know exactly what could possibly be wrong with his grandma that will warrant her taking so much medicine. He sat down questioning himself. Can a headache make one drink all these drugs? I think something is wrong somewhere. Does it mean Grandma drank all these medicines? Incredible. By the time Samuel's grandma returned home, young Samuel got engrossed in his play and forgot to ask Grandma about the medicine. Life continues to move smoothly and always on mixed emotions for Agnes. A minute smile, another minute sad, a roller coaster of emotions, I must say. As Samuel grew older, Agnes began to work endlessly to see Samuel through school in order for her to give him a good and secure future. Samuel took his studies seriously, excelling in all his endeavors. Finally, the hard work of his grandmother paid as he graduated top of his class as a certified medical doctor. As time goes on, Dr. Samuel runs a private hospital as a renowned physician with a speckless reputation. He was known for his kindness, humility, unwavering dedication to his patients, and his medical expertise was top-notch. People came from far and wide to seek consultations because the news of his medical expertise was the talk of the town. Dr. Samuel was down to earth, spoke softly to both the young and the old, in a manner that his words alone will bring even the sick patients some level of therapeutic healing. His hospital became so popular due to the fact that he was the only person with world-class medical equipment within the state where he operates. Dr. Samuels felt so blessed that he would sometimes lock himself in his office and cry, because he could not believe that life would treat him this good, considering how young he was when death unfairly took his sweet, lovely mother away. Agnes' joy knew no bounds to see that her efforts amounted for something. After all, one faithful day, Dr. Samuel started feeling unwell. At first, he had swollen glands and rested his head thinking it was because of stress. But the symptoms persisted, and he decided to carry a test on himself. After undergoing a series of tests, he received devastating news. He was HIV positive. Frozen and speechless, he tried to trace how, where, when, and from who he could have possibly contracted this deadly disease. After days of serious self-examination, Dr. Samuel thought he should carry out a test on his old grandma to be sure she is free from this deadly disease, because he can't afford to lose the only family member he has left. Dr. Samuel became even more dejected by the time the results of his grandma's test came out, and life at this point became a horror reality to the young doctor who was just beginning to enjoy the sunny side of life. In weary eyes, Samuel weeps profusely when he reads where it is written that Agnes is a HIV/AIDS positive. The pains, the pensive, and the realization came as a thunderclap. He stormed out of his office, went to his house, and locked himself up without uttering a word to anybody. His world was shattered, and his mind filled with all sorts of thoughts as he kept blaming his grandmother for transmitting such deadly virus to his grandchild, who trusted her with everything. That same night, Agnes's health deteriorated as she called on Samuel, her frail voice barely audible. Samuel wiped off his tears and scrambled to answer her, despite the discovery. I have a sickness called HIV, Samuel, she gently said in simple terms. Samuel abruptly exclaimed, I know that already, Grandma. It's so disheartening. It's really confusing that you choose to transmit the illness to your one and only grandson. My life has been torn apart. You have ruined my career as a doctor. Tell me, what's your achievement for doing this to me? Agnes widened her eyes in amusement. Are you trying to say you're HIV positive? Oh yes, Grandma, he retorted, pointing his index finger towards her and sweating profusely. You had this kind of virus and you kept it secret from your grandson? Why, Grandma? Why? Samuel, there's something you need to know, she muttered, her hands trembling as she held him. Many, many years ago, I lost my both parents the same day in a tragic fire incident that left nothing but ashes in my ancestral home. Eventually, their death came when I was still at 300 level in university. I was hopeless, helpless, and stranded. I sought out help to complete my finals and get my certificate by next year, but help never came my way, not even to my relatives. I struggled under my own anguish and later on had an affair with a handsome dude who promised to take good care of me if I accepted to be his girlfriend. I reluctantly accepted his proposal, not because of love, but because I saw that as an opportunity for him to see me through school and also drag me out of poverty. Unbeknownst to me that my new lover and benefactor was HIV positive, Samuel was heartbroken. You passed it to me, Grandma. Why? Why? He asked as tears flowed freely down his cheeks. My son, I swear on my gray hair that it wasn't intentional. You must have contracted the virus during a simple moment of care, a time when I cleaned a deep cut of your accidental exposure to my own blood. Honestly, I tried, but maybe I wasn't just careful enough, my dear grandson. She said, crying bitterly, begged Samuel for forgiveness. Samuel swallowed the lump down his throat. He drew closer and wrapped his arms around her frail shoulders. A difficult mistake is not easy to amend. I understand the fact that you didn't remember easily during the accident, but I feel sad and betrayed that you carried this cross all by yourself all these years, Grandma. He was curious to know more from his grandma, but Agnes gave in to her sickness and died in the arms of her grandson. Left with grief and weary eyes, Samuel fell to the floor weeping like a toddler. He feared the stigma of HIV and refused to disclose his health status to anyone. He feared losing his patients, his reputation, his standard, and the trust people have for him. He harbored the secret and decided to keep it to himself till eternity. Dr. Samuel resumed office a few days later and made a decision that will change his world and that of his patients forever. Dr. Samuel decided to donate his contaminated blood to Benita's husband, who happens to be one of Dr. Samuel's most reliable clients and practically looking after her husband, Mr. Kalu, who has been on the hospital bed for over a week. They had been married for decades without a child, but they have an undying love for one another, as they are both inseparable no matter what. Mr. Kalu was brought to the hospital seriously sick, but Dr. Samuel assured him and Mrs. Benita that after the surgery, he will be vigorous again. after the surgery has been done with a blood transfusion from an infected person. He was asked to stay for some weeks before going home. Thereafter, Mr. Kalu began to observe some symptoms in his body, extremely happy that his illness will heal gradually, but it keeps increasing and changing from one kind of symptom to the other. Concerned, Mr. Kalu spoke to his wife. "Benita, I'm losing it all already. My illness kept getting worse with each passing day. Do you think I can survive this?" "You will definitely survive, my husband. Remember, we have no child yet to keep your lineage going. So please don't let negativity get hold of your faith," said Benita in a bid to calm him down. "I have faith in God, as I have always done, but I think that my sickness is—" He couldn't finish when his wife held his hand and abruptly interrupted. "Listen, you're still alive for a reason. You will live long and you will not die of this sickness. From my mouth to God's ears." "Hold on, let me fetch the doctor," she said and dashed out, leaving her paws behind. Soon after, the doctor stumbled into the ward, asked him some questions on how he's feeling. Hours of running tests. The ward was so cold, and the doctor's face was heavy with the weight of news he was about to deliver. "We have run several tests, and one of them came back HIV positive." He dropped the bombshell, his heart racing with guilt. The words sank into Benita's heart like a freight train. HIV? How? When? From whom to who? Both she and Kalu were shocked, and neither could fathom how this was possible. Benita cleared her throat and asked if there could be a mistake in the result, but Samuel explained that the results were confirmed and also showed her Kalu's name, which is clearly written boldly at the right side of the paper. Tears streamed down Kalu's face. Seeing a full-grown man crying like an infant was a heartbreaking moment for everyone in the hospital ward. Benita approaches her husband, consoling him. "If my husband has a HIV, that simply means that I had it too." She murmured and asked the doctor to also conduct a test on her. After waiting for so long, the result came out HIV negative. Benita's eyes widened as her mind raced with numerous thoughts. She frantically dragged the result from Dr. Samuel and went through it repeatedly. However, she held her husband and gave him hope, and together they faced the challenges ahead with courage. Weeks turned into months, and Dr. Samuel's anger grew more. It was a sunny day, especially for pregnant women to visit. Samuel erupted his anger towards them as he began to transmit the illness to them with no mercy. He reused his syringe without proper sterilization to inject almost 10 pregnant women. A nurse, Jennifer, observed that Dr. Samuel was reusing a particular syringe for all the pregnant women and whispered into his ears. "Dr. Samuel, are you sure you haven't been using one syringe for all these women?" she asked. The doctor's smile was as warm as ever, his bedside manner impeccable. He then retorted, "No, nurse Jennifer." With the pretense, all the pregnant women went back to their various houses, unbeknownst that they had contracted something dangerous and that of their fetus in the womb. It's so disheartening to use your past and outrage on little innocent ones. Dr. Samuel continued the cruelty act for 2 weeks without no one noticing. His movement was meticulous and no one was able to suspect. But Nurse Jennifer was always watchful, monitoring every step of his movement because her instincts tell her that there's absolutely something not with Dr. Samuel's modus operandi lately. Samuel began to eat foods that increase blood level, vegetables, nuts, beef, beetroot, and so on. He eats all these just to increase his blood percentage so that he can serve as a blood donor to patients in need of blood transfusion. The next day, it was raining and storming heavily. A middle-aged woman stumbled into the hospital with her son of about 10 years old. The woman explained how her son has been feeling unwell for a couple of days. This is the rainy season, and a lot of people fall sick quite often in times like this. What's his name? David Udair. What's his ag? 10 years. Does he feel dizzy? Yes, sir. Any headache? No, sir. Lost appetite? Yes, sir. His stomach is empty, and he keeps vomiting everything that he eats. Dr. Samuel suggests that he inject him with malaria drugs for him to get better. The woman agreed. Immediately, Dr. Samuel discreetly manipulates blood into the used syringe. About to inject the boy, the woman muttered, "Please, doctor, you can't use a syringe that is not sealed for my son. As a matter of fact, I have a new syringe with me here. You can have it." Dr. Samuel was literally shocked and speechless. He faked a faint smile and murmured, "She's trying to play smart, but I will definitely outsmart her." It was the dawn of a new day, and Nurse Jennifer was the first to resume work. When cleaning Dr. Samuel's office and going through some records, her eyes gazed fixed on something horrifying. She reads within herself, and the result shows that Dr. Samuel was diagnosed with HIV. Her heart raced as she pierced it all together. "I know something was definitely wrong, but I never thought that a compassionate, professional, and a certified doctor, like Dr. Samuel, who was trusted by people with their lives, would denote his HIV-infected blood to patients." Nurse Jennifer was sad. She tread carefully, gathering more evidence before she alerts the authorities. In the day that followed, the health authorities and Nurse Jennifer made a perfect plot. The authorities launched an investigation, sent a young boy in the form of a patient to visit the hospital. "Hey, Dr. Samuel," the boy greeted. "Hey, how can I help you?" he asked. The young boy exclaimed, "I have run a series of tests in other hospitals, and I decided to come here for you to prescribe the drugs." Dr. Samuel took in a deep breath. He prescribes the drugs needed and adds some injections. The doctor didn't know that officials from the Ministry of Health were eavesdropping to his conversation with the young man who was sent to set him up. Immediately, he brought out his reused syringe. The health authorities bursted his office open and surrounded him as Nurse Jennifer kept pointing fingers at him. "Is that a new syringe?" one of them asked, showing a mean facial expression. Dr. Samuel denied any wrongdoing. He stated that the syringe is sterilized, and also, he's a professional doctor that is always careful, and he doesn't take the well-being of his patients for granted. Meanwhile, as the evidence mounted, the nurse took the syringe and ran a test. After some hours of patiently waiting, it turns out that the syringe has already been used by a contaminated person. As if the evidence wasn't enough, Nurse Jennifer brought out a snapshot of the doctor's result, which shows he's a HIV positive. Dr. Samuel was shocked and baffled on how Nurse Jennifer managed to get the result, and even went as far as taking snapshots. At this point, the evidence was overwhelming, and Dr. Samuel was compelled to confess. Dr. Samuel flashed back and narrated how he contracted the deadly disease. His reasons and explanation weren't good enough compared to the lives he ruined and the families he destroyed just because he was angry, though no punishment could undo the damage he has cursed. Many of his patients had contracted HIV. Their lives irrevocably became a nightmare. Some even passed away from complications related to the virus. The story began to trend on all social media platforms. People burn their data bundles as they are glued to their screen watching the horrified tale of a doctor who betrayed his patients, his professional ethics, his calling to save lives, and his purpose on Earth. Families who fell victim cried nonstop. Later on, Dr. Samuel's license was withdrawn, his hospital closed down by the authorities, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Some of his former patients fought back against the stigma of HIV, creating awareness and pushing for better healthcare regulations. Life went on, but the shadow of the past never truly left. The end. Do you think Dr. Samuel's punishment was commensurate with the crime he committed? Let us know in the comments section, and please like and subscribe to this channel for more life-changing stories. Thanks for watching.